Hey, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know about my comics Dark Phantom and Wonder Boy. Both of them can be read for free on Webtoon. Links are in the description below. We've worked really hard on them and it would mean a lot if you would check them out. Thanks, and let's get on with the video. So, it's been a little bit since I've done a Does Anybody Remember video. I love making them, but the problem is I just can't pick any show or movie I watched a long time ago and talk about it. It's gotta be a deep cut, something I never see get brought up by anyone and only exists as a vague memory in the back of every member of my generation's minds. But then a couple weeks ago, a jazzy little song popped into my head and I knew then and there I had to ask the question, does anybody remember It was a PBS Kids show from the early 2000s based on a book by William Joyce. I know I watched it, but all I remembered was the theme song and that's about it. So I decided to check out a few episodes to see what else I could remember. The show is about George Shrinks, a boy who's only 3 inches tall. He doesn't actually shrink, he's just always that height, so the name is just an unfortunate coincidence. Apparently, in the original book, he had a dream about becoming small, and then when he woke up, it was real. But if that was part of the show's lore, I didn't watch that episode. They never really explain why George is so small, which I like. It adds to the charm of it all. People certainly react to George's size, but it's never really brought into question. Not everything needs to be lore, Clifford. I've got a soft spot for stories about tiny characters navigating the world using everyday objects, and George Shrinks does have its fair share of clever ideas in that department. Although it's kind of weird considering that the rest of his family is normal size and they've done nothing to make their home more accommodating for their small son. He has to zipline down from the bed every morning. You're telling me they couldn't just get him a smaller bed? Every time he needs to use the bathroom, he needs to suction cup his way up the side of the toilet. And don't even get me started on his bathing situation. Either he's cleaning his hair with toothpaste or he's cleaning his teeth with shampoo, and I can't decide which is worse. There's even a cat that George says has been trying to eat him for years. You're telling me his parents have not even spoken to their neighbor to control their cat that wants to murder their son? Maybe they're so nice because they're Canadian, a fact I completely forgot about until the episode where they take a bus ride and at their hotel suddenly everyone is French. That one threw me off for a minute. Speaking of that episode, there's a whole scene where George is almost killed by the hotel staff because they apparently can't see or hear him, despite the fact that for the rest of the episode before and after this, everyone can see him just fine. I don't really have any observations there, I just demand consistency from George Shrinks. How am I supposed to write the George Shrinks wiki with all these gaping plot holes? Parental neglect aside, they do manage to get a decent amount of creative set pieces from George's size. Like I said, I like stories about small characters living in a normal-sized world, and by making George an inventor, they really lean into the possibilities of that premise. Although his car, called the Zooper car, kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in that respect. Like he's ziplining down from his bed using a paperclip and taking baths in the sink, but he also just built this futuristic supercar that can turn into a plane, a helicopter, and a tunneling machine. I don't care though, the Zoopercar rules. I remember when I was a kid I wanted a toy of it. They didn't really make a lot of George Shrinks merch though. When I googled George Shrinks merch, all I found was this shirt and I have no idea what it is. I think George is a fun character. They give him a kind of wisecracking adventurer personality, and the voice they gave him really suits that. All the voices are good, except for the dad.
I already have the best gifts anyone could ever ask for. My 2 little treasures named George and Junior.
I don't know, I just get bad vibes from him. I can't explain it, I just don't like him. There aren't very many characters in the show, it's mainly about the main family, so there's not much to talk about there. They give George a friend character, Becky, but honestly her inclusion almost breaks the show in a few ways. Like, she'll usually join George in whatever adventure he's getting up to each episode, but the fact that she's there at all kind of means she could pretty easily solve any problem he's presented with. They sometimes don't even give any reasons why she can't help. Becky's just standing off to the side, fully capable of helping, but instead she chooses to watch as George is almost eaten alive by wild animals. Gaze into the eyes of a true sadist. Style-wise, I think George Shrinks is pretty good. It's got a pleasing art style and the animation is decent considering what their budget must have been. Although you do notice some cut corners every so often. Like when they need to have background characters to fill out a crowd shot, for instance. Are these guys okay?
Blink, motherfucker!
For its soundtrack, George Shrinks has kind of a jazzy, bluesy feel to its music. I think it suits it just fine. Like I mentioned earlier, the theme song is so catchy, it's the entire reason I remembered the show existed in the first place. But man, you can really feel the limitations of that budget when it comes to the background music. They only have like 2 songs, and the second song is really just an up-tempo version of the first song. To make things worse, both of them are only about a minute long. Now I know what you're thinking. Jack, don't you use the same 1-minute background track for all your videos? Well, surprise surprise, the Class Act Jack channel doesn't have the biggest budget in the universe either. But at least my song loops, so it sounds nicer played across a 10-minute video. The George Shrink's background music has a definitive end with a big sax solo, at least I think it's a sax, I don't know, I'm not a music guy. And once it reaches that point, it just awkwardly starts over from the beginning. I swear, I heard that finishing part at least 6 or 7 times per episode.
First you gotta flap your wings. I had to get that bird back if it was the last thing I ever did. And if my idea didn't work, it probably would be the last thing I ever did.
I'll be honest guys, there's not really much to say about George Shrinks. I think it's cute and it's got a few fun ideas, but it's also the kind of show where if you've seen one episode, you've pretty much seen them all. I was originally gonna watch more episodes for this video, but I quickly decided I only needed a small sampling, so I just picked 2 episodes from each season. And it wasn't long before I was watching them all at 1.5 times speed too. By the end of my rewatch, I was so desperate for something different that I just scrolled through looking for any episode that seemed a little bit different from the rest. I ended up picking the Alice in Wonderland one, and yeah, it's an Alice in Wonderland homage, alright. They don't really do anything all that clever with it. There's some cute stuff with the size-changing food at the beginning, but beyond that, it's just a standard retelling of the original story. You know how when TV shows do episodes like this, they'll have their own characters play the roles of the characters from the story? Well, the cast of George Shrinks is so small that the dad ends up playing 2 different parts. George Shrinks isn't a bad show. I remember liking it well enough as a kid, but it just has a premise better suited to a one-off children's book rather than a TV show where every episode has to be 25 minutes long. It doesn't help that they don't often go outside of the house or shake up the formula very much. If you watched it as a kid, hopefully this brings back some memories, and I recommend going back to watch at least 1 episode if you're feeling nostalgic. But I think I figured out the reason that George Shrinks isn't as well remembered as other PBS Kids cartoons. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, consider liking and subscribing. You could have seen this video 24 hours early for just $1 on Patreon. For updates on future projects, follow me on Twitter at ClassActJack. And of course, check out my comics. Links to everything are in the description. I'll see you guys later.
Dreams come true each day.